Today is a super simple topic here, but it's a question that comes up all the time, and that's what happens when I put in an offer, or how do I write an offer?
Welcome to Mortgage Made Simple, the podcast that cuts through the confusion of home loans and delivers exactly what you need to know. Fast, simple, and without the fluff.
And if you're listening to this episode, you're probably either house hunting right now, you may be pre-approved and ready to make a move. So that is super exciting, right? But it's also kind of nerve-wracking. I know because I've been there before, I've sold houses, and it can be very, very nerve-wracking. So writing an offer can feel like you are stepping into the unknown sometimes, and no one really wants to mess that up, right? So today we're going to break it all down. We're going to walk through what to do before you write an offer, what actually goes into an offer, and then what happens after you hit that send button and get an offer accepted. So whether you're a first-time home buyer or you've done this before and you maybe just need a little bit of a refresher, this is everything that you need to know. All right, so before you start throwing out offers, let's just get a few things straight. First up, know your numbers. Some places, lenders are going to pre-approve you up to your maximum limit, but myself as a mortgage advisor, I tend to focus on what you're actually comfortable spending. So your max approval isn't necessarily your target mark. It's about finding a payment that fits your lifestyle and your long-term goals. What you actually feel comfortable spending each month is what truly matters. So look at that estimated monthly payment before you're writing an offer, including taxes, homeowners insurance, or even HOA if that's applicable in the home or condo or townhome that you're looking at. And ask yourself this, is this a number that I can live with? Second, know the market. Our house is flying off the shelf within hours, or do you have room to negotiate? Your realtor is going to help guide you there, but knowing what kind of game you're playing will help you move strategically. And third, know what actually matters to you. So if two homes hit your budget, but one needs updates and the other is a longer commute, what's the deal breaker there? Figure out now so that you don't freeze up when it's go time. And once you're clear on your priorities, it's time to put those thoughts into action. So let's talk about actually writing the offer. When it's time to write the offer, here's what's actually going in on that offer. Let's start with the purchase price. And that sounds simple, right? Not always. If it's a competitive market, you may need to go over asking price. If not, you may have some room to negotiate here. Your realtor will be the one that ultimately helps you figure out what's realistic and what's not. And then your realtor is also going to coach you on what you're going to need for earnest money. And that's also going to be included on your purchase agreement. So think of this as your skin in the game deposit. It tells the seller that you're serious. And in Iowa, for example, where I'm at, it's usually around $1,000, but other markets are going to vary. And this deposit goes towards your closing costs or down payment in the end, so you get it credited back. But if you back out with any valid reason, you could lose out on that earnest money. And then also on the purchase agreement, you're going to indicate the financing details and the loan program. And this tells the seller how you're actually paying for that home, whether it's a conventional loan, FHA, VA, or maybe a USDA loan. Your loan program is notated in the offer, and trust me, it matters. Some sellers prefer certain loans over others based on past experiences or misconceptions. So if you're not sure how the loan program affects your offer, go check out some of my past episodes. For example, the FHA versus conventional loans episode, where I go into a little bit deeper into that topic and why that matters. But then we also have the closing timeline that also gets indicated on the purchase agreement. Most deals take about 30 to 45 days in this market, but if you can close faster, sometimes it gives you an upper hand. And then also you're going to put any contingencies in this offer. And these are kind of like your safety nets, if you will. And there's 4 big ones. You have an inspection contingency, financing contingency, appraisal contingency, and then whether or not you're selling a home or a home sale contingency. Back to the inspection contingency. If you wrote a contingency based on an inspection of the home, what this does is it lets you back out if something major is wrong with the house. Make sure you're talking to your realtor about your options there. And then you also have that financing contingency. And what this does is it protects you if for some reason your loan doesn't get a final approval. And then your appraisal contingency ensures you're not overpaying if the home doesn't appraise for what you offered. And then if you are someone that is selling and buying a house, then this contingency protects you in case your current home doesn't sell in time. And so this one can be tricky in competitive markets. So again, make sure you're working closely with your realtor on this strategy to make sure everything aligns correctly. And finally, the last thing that comes up in the purchase agreement that you're going to want to be aware of is seller concessions. So if you need the seller to cover some or all of your closing costs, this is where you ask for it. But just a heads up, asking for too much sometimes in a competitive market can weaken your offer. So if you put your offer in, what can happen from there? There's a couple different options, or a couple of different responses, I should say, that happen once you do finally submit that offer to the seller. Once that offer goes in, one of three things is going to happen. You're either going to get an accepted offer, a counter offer, or just no response, or a rejection, if you will. So let's talk about the accepted offer. Let's say you gave a good offer. It was a nice competitive offer. Seller signs off. They accept it. We move forward. The second example that I mentioned is a counter. And this is probably the most common things that's going to happen when you do write an offer. So you're going to submit that offer with all of the information that we just talked about in the last section. And then oftentimes a seller is going to counter offer you. And so when they counter offer, they're going to come back and then they're going to give you a chance to either counter back or accept it. And then third, just a flat out rejection. Must have meant that you left, gave them a crummy offer and they were just like, yeah, no way. We're just going to reject that and move on to the next one. So those are the three main things that happen when you do write an offer. So let's move on and let's talk about what happens when your offer does actually get accepted. So you did it, your offer's accepted. Now what? This is where things start to move really fast for a lot of folks. And there's a lot more that happens between the offer being accepted and then getting the keys. But for now, let's just focus on the immediate steps you need to take just to make sure that everything is on track. First, you're going to have the earnest money that we talked about. And usually that's going to be due within 24 to 48 hours of you writing that offer. And they're usually going to cash that check right away. And this is a really critical step because it makes your contract official and it shows a seller that you're serious. Next, the loan process kicks into full gear. So what happens is, as a lender, we order appraisal and title work, and then we start moving into underwriting. And here's something important. What you don't want to do during this time is you don't want to make any big financial moves. So no new credit cards, no financing furniture, don't switch jobs. Lenders hate surprises. And this is the easiest way to derail your approval. So you'll also need to schedule that home inspection, as I mentioned in the contingencies. And your realtor is going to be the one that helps you coordinate that and then walk you through those results. But this is your chance to ensure that there are no hidden nightmares in the home that you're about ready to buy. And so if something concerning pops up, you may be able to renegotiate in certain cases, or in certain cases, if it's extreme, you can walk away from the transaction. I've seen that happen plenty of times as well. So if you get your home inspection scheduled, you're going to want to do that right away because there's usually going to be a deadline in that purchase agreement when you have to have that completed by. And then finally, what we're going to work with in the financing side is just some closing prep. And so a few days before closing and the big day, you're going to receive a closing disclosure, which breaks down final numbers. But leading up to that, you're going to get some other disclosures, such as a loan estimate, a disclosure package, and there's a lot more that goes into it with underwriting, not the focus for today's episode. But this is the moment when your offer is accepted that everything really starts to kick into high gear for that final approval. And so these first steps are what really set the foundation for a smooth closing. And you don't have to figure it out out all alone. That's what we're here for. Your lender, your realtor, your closing team. And then we help guide you through it all along the way. So let's wrap this up just real quick with some final thoughts. There it is. That's the roadmap to writing an offer and getting it accepted. And it sounds a little less scary when you break it all down. But if you are house hunting, save this episode, keep it handy, and play it back when you're getting close to making an offer. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. Thanks for listening to this brief episode of Mortgage Made Simple. I hope you found this helpful. Hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more straight to the point home buying tips. Happy house hunting. I'll talk to you soon.